Walter Kowalski buries his wife Dorothy. Many guests came to say goodbye at the church. However, the grandchildren are dressed inappropriately and make silly jokes. The sons see their father's angry gaze. Still too young for his role, Pastor Janovich delivers a speech while granddaughter Ashley fiddles with her phone. Later, at the memorial dinner, the grandchildren discover their grandfather's army photographs and medals in the basement. Walt refuses help from relatives and does everything himself. A gruff xenophobe rebuffs Tao, a neighbor's boy who distracts from the memorial service and asks him for tools. In the garage, he catches Ashley smoking but refrains from scolding her. She bluntly asks who will inherit the vintage couch and the car in the garage after their grandfather's death. The young pastor tries to gain Walt's trust and insists he come to confession, as he promised Dorothy. To the old man this sounds simply ridiculous, given their age difference. He only attended church to accompany his late wife. He spent his entire life at the Ford plant and harbors resentment towards Japanese cars and people. Watching the neighbors' rituals, he calls them barbaric. Janovich returns, irritating the old man again with camaraderie. He annoys Kowalski, claiming his attitude is prejudiced. Walt no longer holds back, calling him a 27-year-old virgin who likes to hold the hands
of old ladies who are superstitious and promises them eternity.
While Tao walks the streets, he is insulted by local Mexican gang members. Another gang led by Cousin Spider steps in to defend him, driving off the troublemakers and insisting Tao join them in their car. Tao declines such excessive attention. Later, they find him planting flowers at home. He quietly tends to his business, but the gang persists, convincing him he won't have to worry anymore under their family's protection. Their target is the old man's prized possession, a 1972 Ford Gran Torino in perfect condition. The priest pursues Walt into a bar where he drinks beer with friends. He takes his promise to his wife seriously. But what does the young seminarian, who has only studied books, know? Walt, on the other hand, survived the horrors of the Korean War. He endured fierce battles, and won't listen to anyone who hasn't faced similar trials. But the veteran is stuck in the past. He's no longer on the front line surrounded by enemies.
Sounds like you know a lot more about death than you do living.
At night, Walt hears someone has invaded his garage. He grabs his rifle and catches Tao there. The old man takes aim at the boy but stumbles and falls, accidentally pulling the trigger. The bullet misses Tao, who flees. Walt gradually turns his house into a fortress, keeping his rifle ready. His son calls, driven by selfish motives, unconcerned about his father's real issues, and equally stubborn. Spider tries again to recruit Tao, but now he resists with all his might. The entire family stands up for him, and a scuffle moves onto Walt's lawn, where he emerges with his rifle. The gang retreats, hurling threats at the old man. Tao's family thanks Walt. The next day, they bring him food and flowers as a gift. He greets them with his usual grumbling, and tosses the gifts in the trash. Tao's sister, Sue, speaks English well, and her brother apologizes, but Walt only threatens him to stay out of his territory. The pastor arrives and asks why Walt didn't call the police. One wrong move, and there could have been casualties. Janovich insists that it would lighten Walt's burden to let go of the past. The pastor has heard many stories of those ordered to kill and commit atrocities. They confess their guilt and heal their souls. Walt agrees with much of it, but the young man doesn't understand the most important part. A person is haunted most by the things they weren't ordered to do. The old man visits his favorite barbershop, where he exchanges friendly insults with the barber, Italian Martin. Sue walks with a boyfriend when they are surrounded by three tough-looking hooligans. The girl bravely tries to stand up for herself, but the odds are against her. Walt witnesses the scene and steps out of his pickup truck. The thugs don't see danger in the old man, but he also has a real gun ready. Threatening the scoundrels, he puts the girl in the car. Walt scolds Sue for wandering dangerous areas with some spineless deadbeat. The girl tells about the Hmong people who live in China, Laos, and Vietnam. They fought alongside the U.S., and the Northern Army began to persecute them when the Americans withdrew. Young guys like Tao face bullying more often than girls, and struggle to adapt to migration. Later, Walt notices Tao helping a neighbor grandmother, while other teenagers pass by. Meanwhile, Walter's own children have completely written him off. They gift him a phone with large numbers, and a grabber stick for his birthday. The last straw comes when they suggest moving him to a nursing home. They set out the gifts along with the invitation on the street. Sue notices the lonely neighbor sipping beer, and invites Walt to a barbecue. He refuses as best he can, and the girl resorts to humor.
No worries, we only eat cats.
It seems to work, and Walt comes over to try the neighbor's beer. Sue's grandmother behaves like his mirror image, hating Americans while others view him as a zoo animal. Walt sees a full house of people, a family that respects traditions. His cough worsens, and he goes upstairs to the bathroom, reflecting on what he has more in common with a Chinese family than his own. The old man gets tipsy and enjoys the food heartily. Sue suggests he talk to Tao in the basement, where the youth who speaks English hangs out. The silent boy sits alone, and Walt meets a girl named Yua. Grandpa approaches Tao and teaches him how to behave with women. Yua has been eyeing him all evening, but he hasn't even tried to talk to her. The old man provokes and teases the teenager to awaken his dignity. Walter tries Asian food and now accepts gifts from neighbors. One day Tao's mom says the boy must work off his shame by helping a neighbor with chores. Grandpa refuses, but eventually gives in under the pressure of women. On the appointed day, Walt orders Tao to stand outside and count birds. The man again provokes the boy, hinting at his weakness, but Tao withstands the test, and Walt gives him a real job. Under the old man's guidance, they fix the house. Walt's cough worsens, and he can no longer ignore it. In the hospital, Dr. Chu suggests starting a full examination. The diagnosis is grim. Walt calls his son, but he's busy with daily life and asks to call back another time. There's an insurmountable gap between them. Spider continues to keep watch over Cousin Tao. He hasn't forgotten that the kid failed to steal the Gran Torino and flunked his gang initiation ritual. Walt steps in and eventually takes the boy under his wing. The old man teaches Tao how to do manly chores around the house, shows him his garage and tool set. Tao is impressed and admits he could never assemble such a collection. In response, Walt gives him pliers, duct tape, and anti-corrosion supplies, a basic kit to handle half the tasks. Walt's breathing worsens, and he can no longer move the fridge from the basement alone. He sets aside his pride and asks Tao for help. Tao wants to take the heavier end, but Grandpa insists. Eventually, Tao persuades the old man. Sue explains that Tao lacks a male role model who could teach him about life in America. They spend time together, like grandfather and grandson. Tao washes the car, helps in the garden, and worries about Walt's health, who continues to smoke despite his cough. Tao wants to work in trade like Walter's elder son. However, Grandpa calls such a profession a license for theft, but Tao lacks college funds, and without education, he's stuck. Walt takes it upon himself to find Tao a job, but first, he needs to learn how to behave. He takes Tao to the barber with him. The old men teach him to speak and behave like a man, politely and confidently. Since Tao currently lacks a car, a job, and a girlfriend, it's alright to stretch the truth a bit so he doesn't appear completely pitiful. Walter takes Tao to the foreman to get a job. The boy passes the test again and gets hired. In the store, the man buys Tao a tool belt. Tao is very grateful for everything Walt has done for him. But one day, returning from the construction site, Tao runs into Spider's gang. They take his tools, beat him, and leave a cigarette burn on his face. Walt sees his beaten friend and offers to talk to the thugs, but Tao refuses help. So Walt takes matters into his own hands. He tracks down one of the attackers and gives him a proper beating. He threatens him with a gun to make sure the gang stays away from Tao for good. The following days go well. Tao gathers the courage to ask you out on a date. Walter rightfully offers to drive the girl in his Gran Torino. Late one evening, the gang ambushes the Hmong house. Thankfully, no one is killed, but Tao gets a minor neck injury. However, it turns out Sue isn't home. She went to her aunt's but never made it there. The gang intercepted her on the way. Hours later, they dump her outside the house, covered in blood. Walt is beside himself with guilt. He feels responsible for what happened because the thugs retaliated against him for the humiliation he inflicted on one of them. In a fit of rage, he runs home and smashes his hands bloody against cabinets and glass doors. The Holy Father visits him. He took Sue to the hospital. The frightened girl and her entire family refuse to testify against Spider, rendering the police powerless until someone speaks up. This will continue until someone intervenes. Genovich drinks with Walter and says he's also enraged. The enraged young man visits his neighbor in the morning. Tao waits to see how Walt will respond to such lawlessness. He knows Walt won't let the criminals go unpunished and is ready to take up arms, but the old man stops him. Kowalski has made enough mistakes in his life and knows that such matters are no joke. He sends Tao home and takes time to devise a plan. He relaxes in the bath, gets a haircut and shave from Martin, and gets fitted for a black suit by the tailor. Afterwards, he goes to confession with Genovich. Boy is shocked, but Walt admits that he's to blame for the rift with his sons. Genovich warns that he'll be on duty with the police at the house where the gang is gathering. At the appointed time, Tao and Walt meet. The old man shows Tao a rifle and presents him with the Silver Star Medal. In the war, he killed over a dozen men in battle and was the only one to survive that night's mission. Walt distracts the boy and jumps out of the basement, locking him downstairs. Walt explains that killing a man is the worst thing one can do, and he won't allow Tao to meet such a fate. The old man is proud of his friendship with the boy and won't risk his life. He leaves the dog with the stern old woman and later calls Sue to help get her brother out of trouble. Genovich and the police wait outside the gang's house for hours, but nothing happens. They receive orders to leave and take the pastor with them, making sure the path is clear. Walt appears, insulting and provoking the gangsters. In his hand is a cigarette and a gun at his fingertips. He reaches into his pocket and makes a sudden move. The gang fires all their weapons, but Kowalski only pulls out a lighter. He has been unarmed all this time. The old man sacrifices himself so the police can act decisively. Now the gang will be behind bars for a long time. Sue, Tao, and Genovich bid farewell to their friend and mentor. The entire Meng family attends the funeral. They show their respect by wearing special ceremonial attire. After the ceremony, the Kowalski family listens to the grandfather's will. They inherit nothing. He leaves his house to the church and the Gran Torino to Tao. Of course, with the condition that the kid doesn't mess it up with a ridiculous spoiler or idiotic lightning bolts.